And our top focus on World DNA this morning. Well, delegates from more than 100 nations met in Cuba for the G77 plus China summit. The two-day meeting of nations of the Global South saw strong anti-West emotions, with the leaders criticizing the existing international order. Even the draft final declaration, it underlined, and I'm quoting here, unfair world order, in turn calling for urgent reforms. Well, the United Nations chief Antonio Guterres also admitted that the global framework system have failed, and even went on to say that the world is failing developing countries. Well, he was attending the summit just days before the UN General Assembly session begins this week in New York. But his observations were not isolated. Take a listen.
A governança mundial segue assimétrica. A ONU, o sistema Bretton Woods y a OMC están perdiendo credibilidad.
Ha llegado el momento de ponerle punto final a los patios traseros, porque no somos piezas de un tablero de interés de la apología de la dependencia. Nuestras naciones no deben continuar sufriendo la privatización masiva de sus territorios.
El enemigo es el mismo, que quiere adueñarse de nuestro pueblo, de nuestras naciones, que quiere imponer su hegemonía en el mundo, y lo vemos como se lanza contra naciones que no tienen política hegemonista.
Now, many nations have been attending the summit, including Brazil, which also criticized the U.S. embargo against the summit's host, Cuba, and also its inclusion in the list of countries that sponsor terrorism.
Tem sido defensora de uma governança global mais justa e até hoje é vítima do embargo econômico ilegal. O Brasil é contra qualquer medida coercitiva de caráter unilateral. Rechaçamos a inclusão de Cuba na lista de estados patrocinadores de terrorismo. Nos últimos anos, tivemos aumento na proporção do PIB.
Let's tell you more about this two-day summit. Well, the group of 77 plus China meeting was attended by 114 delegations, countries comprising the Global South from Africa, Asia, Central America, South America, the Caribbean. They were all a part of the meeting. Like I mentioned, 77 developing nations formed G77 in 1964. Well, apart from this, the grouping's membership was grown to 134 since then. Currently, Cuba holds the group's rotating presidency for 1 year. Meanwhile, Uganda is set to assume BLOC'S presidency in 2024. Well, the theme of this year's summit was current development challenges, the role of science, technology and innovation, which was the theme of this year's summit. The underlying idea was to bring positions closer together ahead of the upcoming UNGA session. While the draft final declaration, it emphasized on the urgent need for a comprehensive reform of international financial architecture. Apart from this, this is also being done to make it more inclusive. While the document also rejected the unilateral measures or embargoes imposed by rich nations on underdeveloped countries. The draft also rejected technological monopolies that leave developing states even further behind. At the same time, the G77 plus China proposed more extensive funding for technological issues in poor countries, apart from greater cooperation among the nations of the South. Well, the G77 nations are not alone in calling for changing the rules of the game. Well, the G20 summit held last week in India's New Delhi also called for reforming the existing multilateral institutions. Well, this is to make them more relevant and responsive to the global South.